Okay, good evening to everyone. I'm going to begin this evening's meeting. I want to welcome all of you to our monthly general meeting of February 24th. We're going to call the meeting to order. We have the council attendance, acceptance of the agenda, rules of order. I will go through action items from the January 27th general meeting. We have a presentation from the Department of Health, as well as a presentation from Nation Building. I'll provide an update on the Convoy protest that occurred 2 weeks ago. We have a number of questions that we have received ahead of the meeting that we will review with you and provide responses. And then we have a resolution accepting the previous council meeting minutes of January 27th, and then we'll make an announcement of the next general meeting. That is our agenda for this evening. Could I have a mover to accept? Moved by Vanessa, second by Julie. All in favor? All right, thank you. And just a matter of attendance, Chief Jackie Benedict unfortunately is not able to join us this evening. She is out sick. As we have in the past and continue to do, recognize all the members that we have lost since the last general meeting. As you know, we are using the Zoom system at this time because of the ongoing pandemic, but previously we had implemented a cancellation protocol when a meeting was to be moved because of the loss of a community member. Currently, because we are using the Zoom's platform, we don't rotate in districts at this time, but we do want to pay respect and honor to those in our community who we have lost over the last month. So I'd like to observe a moment of silence for the members that we have lost. So if we could do that now, I'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much. And on behalf of myself and all of our members of council and the Mohawk Council of Akwesasne, we extend our sincerest condolences to all those who have lost a loved one, not only this last month, but over the last several months. Dealing with loss is difficult, but especially having to deal with loss during the pandemic has made it even more difficult and extremely more difficult for all of us. So this evening's meeting, I'm going to read the rules of order. As I mentioned, we are using the Zoom platform. We'll start our meeting at 6 p.m. and we'll go to approximately 8 p.m., at which time we will take a check to see where we are on the agenda and whether or not the meeting will continue to proceed past 8 p.m. or if items will be deferred to the next general meeting. Personal issues will not be dealt with in this forum. While we are using the Zoom platform, we ask that people please continue to respect that personal issues are not going to be dealt in this forum. This is a public forum. These meetings are recorded and made available to other community members who are not able to join us this evening by video. It's made available on YouTube. So since this is a public forum, we ask that if any individual is asking a question or has a comment about an employee of the Mohawk Council, that you not identify them by person because they are not here as well. It is a public forum. We keep the questions in general. If there are personal issues that you want to deal with, we ask that those be done on a one-to-one basis. So we will make a meeting with you to either meet with a member of our council, myself, or a member of the administration to help and assist in navigating some of the concerns or questions you may have. This evening, we're using the Zoom platform, and I want to ask that you please raise your hand when you have a question. If you're familiar with the raise hand function, please use that. If you're on the phone or not familiar with the Zoom platform, please unmute and indicate you'd like to ask a question. As the chairperson, I will facilitate the conversation this evening, including taking an speaking order of individuals who have raised their hand and like to ask a question. I ask that all of the questions remain on the point of the discussion at the time. If there are other items, there is other times during the agenda this evening that we can discuss, but please reminding you to please keep your questions relevant to the presentations this evening. If there are items that we can't answer or don't have an answer to, we will create a list of follow-up items that we will take back and find the answer to you and report them back to you at the next general meeting in the form of follow-up action items. So that is the rules for this evening's general meeting. Again, we are using the Zoom platform. We ask that everybody please remain respectful. If there are individuals who are not respectful to the speaking order or to one another, I will use the mute function, and if it continues, then an individual will be removed from the Zoom platform and will not be able to participate for the rest of the evening. So that is the rules of order for this evening's general meeting of February 24th. I'll take a moment now to go through the follow-up items that were noted from the January 27th general meeting. So there was a question regarding the police commission and police services in relation to if the community will be meeting with the police commission in an open forum. Unfortunately, since the last meeting, there has not been a police commission meeting where members of our public safety portfolio can bring that forward to the police commission and have that conversation with them. So this is going to be an item that's going to be referred to the next community general meeting for follow-up after our police commission meeting has occurred and we're able to begin that conversation with them. We can report that back to you. As well, there was a question about the status of surveys that have been done by the Mohawk Council, and the most notably was the Department of Health, Department of Community and Social Services, and a survey on transportation. There was a request that these be made public to the community, so we are continuing to research those and see what ways they can be reported back, or if they have been reported back already, so that you can receive that information. As well, there was an issue raised at the last general meeting in relation to Section 95 housing. There was a request to meet with administration and members of the housing portfolio. That meeting has not been actioned on yet, but will be actioned on in the coming weeks. Our apologies for that. As well, I do have at the end of the meeting, or later on in the meeting, excuse me, a few questions in relation to Section 95, and we'll make that report then on questions that have been received. Otherwise, that is our follow-up items from the last general meeting of January 27th. So we will turn to our first presentation this evening. So this evening we are joined by a few representatives of the Department of Health, as well as we have a special guest, Dr. Brittany Jock, who is going to be doing a presentation as well. But the first presentation on the health subject will be done by our portfolio chiefs. And so I'll ask that the presentation please be brought up, and I'll turn it over to the portfolio to walk us through this.
Yamagoa, Sego, Zewaguego, I'm very happy to be here and to present.
Brittany, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, we have another presentation first on health, and then we'll be turning to yours.
Oh, perfect. Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah.
So I'll ask Health Portfolio to walk us through this presentation, and then we're going to turn to Dr. Brittany Jock.
Good evening. This is the Department of Health. Next page. Can I get the next page, please? Community COVID-19 update. COVID-19 vaccine and booster clinics held weekly Wednesday at the Quebec Health Facility from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. by appointment during the month of March. Contact the community health program to schedule vaccine booster appointments at 613-575-2341 extension 3220. Additional vaccine booster clinics will be scheduled as needed. MCA mask mandate is still in effect. Masks must be worn correctly when in public and within MCA facilities. Masks must be worn over the mouth and nose to be effective. Community members are encouraged to continue following public health guidelines as directed, social distancing and washing and sanitizing your hands. Up to Dwayne.
If community members have tested positive for COVID-19, isolate, quarantine as directed. Next page, please. Community health program will be transitioning from providing service delivery virtually to allow in-person visits with public health measures in place. Community health program is at 100% staff capacity. Medical clinics are seeing patients within the facilities face-to-face, adults, children's, babies. Public health guidelines continue to be followed. Blood work clinics are taking place, and clinics are still at 50% capacity for patients within the clinics. As restrictions lift within Ontario, more services and capacities will be made available. Next page. The DOH mobile clinic unit has been delivered and is housed at the Gawanoga Medical Clinic. Mobile clinic services and dates will be announced via MCA's communication unit once scheduled. Services will include mobile clinic home visits, vaccine clinics, and mental health and addiction counseling services. Next page. Community health program vaccination stats. Total vaccines given, 8,174. Total vaccines include individuals who have received doses through MCA and SRMT health services. Full 2 doses, 18 plus administered, 3,228. Full 2 doses, 12 to 17 administered, 232. Full 3 doses, 18 plus administered, 1,234. Full 3 doses, ages 16 to 17 administered, 31. First doses, 5 to 11 administered, 78. And second doses, 5 to 11 administered, 54.
Okay, thank you for that update. As mentioned, Dr. Brittany Jock will be doing an update as well on or providing us with some information in relation to the pandemic. So we're going to go to her now. Brittany, are you able to bring up your PowerPoint yourself, or do you need us to?
If you could share it for me, I would greatly appreciate. Yeah.
Okay, give us a moment, then we'll bring that up.
Yeah. And while you're doing that, I can introduce, and I'm very excited to be here, as given by my bit of a false start, and it's great to hear, as always, the amazing work that's being done in the community, and related to that is this opportunity to study some of the amazing community mobilization that has happened surrounding COVID-19. I am working with other researchers, including Indigenous researchers from McGill and an ally researcher from Queen's University, Nyawant Goa, for sharing these slides for me. We study community mobilization for health, and especially for diabetes and obesity prevention. And what we saw through our existing partnerships with communities was this amazing mobilization effort that communities were undertaking to protect our communities and our families from COVID-19. And so we thought this was an amazing opportunity to study this and highlight from a strength-based perspective some of the work that is being done from Indigenous communities. Next slide, please. So this project is starting from a community identified need. As I said, we have existing partnerships in 4 communities, and through our existing relationships and brainstorming these ideas is particularly through our work in Tyendinaga, Manawan, Kahnawake, and of course my ties to Akwesasne, that we all saw these amazing opportunities and connected with community members from each of the communities to express interest and get feedback on this research topic. We submitted a grant. Could you go to the next slide, please? We submitted a grant to CIHR and we were funded. Really happy to receive community support in terms of letters of approval for that grant. And we are based on a team from that is coming from the Kahnawake School Diabetes Prevention Program. The nominated PI is lead researcher is Lucy Levesque, and Alex McComber and Trina Wazundio Delormier are both from Kahnawake, and myself, of course, are comprising the research team along with other trainees who work with us. Next slide, please. So we, as I said, have engaged local team members, and this is just the starting point. We, in order to submit the grant, we got an initial letter of support and feedback from the health department, and a letter of support from Executive Director Heather Phillips, and I have given updates at the Akwesasne COVID-19 biweekly update calls. I had a meeting with Amber Montour following the notice of our funding, and since this, we've also reached out to leadership and health departments from both MCA and St. Regis Mohawk Tribe. And last week I presented to the health board. So even more community engagement in getting the necessary approvals for this project. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, we're planning on collaborating with the EOC and Akwesasne. We have included funds for hiring a community-based researcher in Akwesasne. We want to establish a community advisory circle and identify representatives for a project advisory circle and establish a memorandum of understanding, and that will include providing project resources. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, the 4 participating communities are Manawan, Kahnawake, Akwesasne, and Tyendinaga. And this has really shaped the research questions and based on our strong relationships with these communities. Next slide, please. This research is informed by the Code of Research Ethics established by the Kahnawake School Diabetes Prevention Program, which is really one of the foremost examples of working researchers working in partnership with communities. And we proceed respecting and including Indigenous methodologies, come from a strength-based perspective, and value the experiences and traditional knowledge of communities that are participating. We include continuous consultation and collaboration. We view that research must be relevant to communities to be useful and to positively impact health, that we support meaningful and develop reciprocal capacity building. So it's both communities and researchers learning from each other. And that research findings must be returned in a way that is useful. Also, the OCAP principles are the dimensions of data sovereignty. So recognizing communities have ownership, control, access, and possession of the data that is generated through research. Next slide, please. So the proposed governance model for this project is based on these 3 roles that are coming out, and this is what we have proposed and working together to achieve this project. First, next slide, the project advisory circle will have a few representatives from each community. So it's giving us overall feedback on the research project and make sure that it's conducted in respectful ways and meets quarterly. Members can include participating communities, knowledge holders, members of the research team. We're really flexible to what communities would like. Next slide, please. Community advisory circles will be established within each participating community, and again can include elders, community knowledge users, stakeholders, community-based researchers. And this would meet on an as needed basis to work with the research team and develop and review research documents, review findings. And this makes for really strong research because, you know, we're collaborating along the way, and it means our results and findings are even stronger. The last group, next slide please, is the research team, and we're the ones who are, you know, primarily responsible for doing a lot of the work, and you know, we both try to we realize communities are very busy doing COVID-19 mobilization, and we do not want to burden communities. And so we plan to do most of the work, but plan to have these approaches to engage with communities along the way and make sure we're doing things in a good way. So we, the main researchers, staff, and trainees will hire community-based researchers in each community, will coordinate the research project, provide relevant training, and be in charge of the all the necessary data collection activities. Next slide, please. So the research questions, I'll give an overview of the research questions and the timeline. Next slide, please. First, we're looking at what are the drivers and impacts related to community mobilization in the context of COVID-19. So really understanding what is happening in to facilitate this mobilization. Next slide, please. Second, we'll be looking at how community mobilization during this pandemic can be leveraged to understand holistic health consequences of the pandemic. And this can include whatever communities are interested in, including mental health consequences are commonly raised as other important health issues. Next slide, rather. And lastly, we'll be talking, exploring the role of systemic racism, access to care, and confidence in science, and how that impacts the community's mobilization response. And this is really coming from, as I mentioned, one of the partnering communities is Manawan, and Joyce Echaquan happened during the pandemic. She was mistreated, and that really brought to the fore all of these important issues around racism, access to care, and how that can impact communities in terms of uptake of vaccines, or you know, trust and faith in science, since that is part of what is driving health efforts in communities. Next slide, please. So for our research methods, next slide, we'll be doing qualitative data collection, which is really meaning textual data. So we do interviews and modified talking circles. So for the first two research questions, we will be doing, next slide, please, qualitative modified talking circles in each community with people who are familiar with the community mobilization. Then we'll do about 10 to 12 interviews in each community to develop a conceptual framework for question 1, and then 5 to 6 interviews in the community to understand the stories of people's broad impacts of health, and what has really arisen as the interest areas for question 2. Next slide, please. Question 3 will be collected later after we've collected question 1 and 2. We will conduct modified talking circles with community members and a modified talking circle with community staff, and do follow-up interviews to understand this impacts of systemic racism, access to care, and confidence in science. So this project, next slide please, is a 1-year, next slide. I'm gonna skip ahead in the interest of time. Next slide please. This project will be happening over the course of a year. Right now, we're in the process of getting community approvals to be able to proceed with data collection, and we hope to hire a community-based researcher and get them trained this spring, and we have until March of 2023 to complete data collection and complete the write-up for this project. So that's a brief overview of the project, and I'd be happy to answer any questions and hear community comments. Nyawakoa also for Amber Montour and Tessa Jocko's help in being able to present at today's meeting. Really appreciate their strong partnership.
For that, Brittany, are there any questions in relation to what Dr. Brittany Jock has presented on this study project? Perhaps we could take the PowerPoint down so we can see. Thank you. Is there an area where individuals can go to get additional information or provide input at some point?
Nyawa, that's a great question. We're just getting the community approvals, and I welcome people to contact me directly if they have questions or comments. My email is brittany.jock@mcgill.ca. If you Google Brittany Jock, I'm sure you'll be able to find my McGill page, and that's another way to connect with my work email. Always happy to connect, and we hope once we get community approvals that we can post, about these opportunities to join the Community Advisory Circle and Project Advisory Circle, and welcome people's participation and engagement in this project.
Absolutely. Vincent, go ahead.
Good evening, everybody. I hope everybody's doing okay. What Brittany is supposed to be the benefit to Akwesasne from this project?
Nyawakoa, that's an excellent question, and I might have ended early before I covered that slide, so thank you so much for asking. So the community benefit is, I think, helpful to understand, from the perspective of research, what went well in terms of the community mobilization, and also get to have this broader perspective of what is happening in other communities. Because I think, one of the challenges with COVID-19 and working in these crazy emergency situations is we have to focus on the here and now, and hopefully the reports that we give back to the community can help identify other opportunities, and hopefully when it comes to the third research question, looking at access to care and systemic racism and confidence in science, maybe can shed some light to improve vaccine uptake. So we hope that the results are helpful, and we will plan to give a report back to the community, the participating communities, with our findings.
Thank you. Connie Lazar, we'll go to you.
Thank you, Grand Chief. Hello, everyone. Brittany, thank you for your presentation. It's quite interesting. I just wanted to ask, how do you plan to engage community members in your committees, and will there be a call out for your local researcher?
So that's a great question. This is one of my, I'm very happy to be able to be coming back and working in Akwesasne. I've trained elsewhere at Johns Hopkins and had the chance to work with other Native American communities. And this is my first time working at home, and I'm so excited. We'll definitely be looking into opportunities to broadcast and share these opportunities with the broader community. I can look into that, and if you have any suggestions for how we can do that, I'd be open. So part of this is a learning process for me, and very excited to do so.
Thank you for that. Again, so those of you that can see the chat, we do have Brittany Jock's email in there, which is brittany.jock@mcgill.ca, and that is McGill University. And again, if you want to Google her contact information is there as well. Thank you. There is a question in the chat. Is this open to just Quebec communities, or is it all of Akwesasne?
Thanks so much for that question. So we're funded through CIHR. We are hoping to include both sides of the community to get, you know, a more holistic understanding of what happened in terms of community mobilization in Akwesasne. So we're not limited to just Quebec, and I'm in the process of getting community approvals so that we can understand in a holistic way. Yeah,
good. Vincent, we'll go back to you.
One of the things that I think has been really difficult to understand is the resistance of some people to participate in and get vaccinations, and like it sounds like there's different information coming out in social media and stuff like that. So there's a bunch of people that are listening to, you know, you shouldn't get vaccinated, it's got this in it, or it's going to do this to people. Is this project going to look at anything that that would give us insight in how to better send out communication to our members on on how, I don't know if it's how, but why people should be vaccinated? There's a lot, you know.
right. Yeah,
I don't know if that's going to be done.
Yeah, thanks for that question. And that's a big problem that, you know, everyone is dealing with, this fight against misinformation. I think in Akwesasne, we're doing such an amazing job getting good information out there, and particularly the communications departments on both sides of the community are really doing an amazing job. But it's you know, something that's broader than our community even. Through that third research aim, we hope to identify some of the things that are more unique to Indigenous communities, and hopefully by, you know, understanding what's happening in the 4 different communities, we could hopefully shed some light on that, and hopefully those results will be useful to the community. It is hard to anticipate with qualitative research the findings that you'll get, because it can be exploratory, but that's also really why it's really effective, because, you know, we're not going in with a really narrow survey. So I hope it can be helpful, and happy to share those findings.
Okay. Thank you for that, and thank you for the questions on it. Very, very helpful to us. So I think as a matter of going forward, it would be good if we continue to touch base on this project and perhaps provide either a written or invite you back as it progresses along. I mean, unfortunately, you know, the COVID, will be continue to deal with it in many aspects for a very long time, and through study like this, it will be very helpful to us. And it's great that we have some Ungahumas from our community and other sister communities working through this. So Yama, for sharing the information with us, and we'll touch base again on this and report back to the community in regular intervals.
Yama Goa, that sounds great.
All right. Okay, I'm going to take a moment there. Are there any questions in relation to COVID that any of the members may have? Okay. All right, so thank you very much for sharing that information. One, the current statistics and update on behalf of the Department of Health here at the Mohawk Council, and then the research project that Dr. Brittany Jock and her other researchers are doing on studying the pandemic and its effects on the mobility of our peoples. All right, so the next presentation we're going to move into is the nation building program, which here, as you know, is the UNDRIP self-government negotiations. Peter Garl is the program manager for that program. So we will turn it over to him to provide an update to the community on behalf of nation building.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to my home. It's been a pleasure. Just think of following Brittany Jock. That's amazing. I remember her as her and her sisters at basketball clinics with her, of course, with Richard, her father, and of course, her mother sits on one of our working tables. But following her is a great honor. I'm going to give you a short slide presentation on UNDRIP as an update. Shannon, next slide. The Mohawk Council of Akwesasne and the Government of Canada are currently in the last stages of negotiating the UNDRIP self-government agreement. This agreement establishes fundamental principles of the government-to-government relationship between Akwesasne and Canada. We call it Eska. It all recognizes Akwesasne self-government as an Aboriginal right under Section 35 of the Constitution Act 1982. It also establishes new recognized jurisdiction and authority in areas previously governed by the Indian Act. I will be coming back to the Indian Act quite a bit in this presentation. While not eliminating fully the Indian Act completely, there will be a modern, legally recognized jurisdictional landscape for Akwesasne. The two legal instruments that must be finalized by Akwesasne, along with Eska, to ensure continuity of critical government functions that will make Akwesasne outside the Indian Act provisions as soon as the agreements come into effect. They are the Akwesasne Land Code, the Physical Relationship Agreement. UNDRIP is responsible to facilitate. Our office facilitates the Akwesasne Canada negotiations. We participate and we support the Grand Chief and Council in the negotiations. The negotiators for the Akwesasne, of course, is the Grand Chief and our portfolio chiefs. The chief negotiator for Canada is Fred Caron, who some of you know as the chief negotiator for the Dundee land claim settlement. A little bit on the land code. The land code sets out the rules, procedures, administrative structures for lands management. The land code will replace sections 18 to 41 of the Indian Act. Those will be outlawed. They'll be out of our agreement. And these sections will no longer apply to Akwesasne lands. The Physical Relationship Agreement negotiated with Canada will set out the funding levels that Akwesasne will receive from Canada to implement the jurisdiction and authority in the Eska. Currently, MCA receives its funding from the Department of Indigenous Service Regional Office in Toronto. These formulas utilizes formulas that are so outdated and controlling that they have to pertain to all of the Ontario First Nations, the 180 plus. That funding pie has not changed for many years, but our new legislative funding will change through the self-government agreement. Next slide, please. The Indian Act. Of course, the Indian Act in 1876 is a legislation that places many restrictions on First Nations people. Excuse me. The act was an attempt to assimilate the First Nations people into non-Aboriginal communities. Two examples where Akwesasne has taken back control are the Akwesasne Membership Code enacted in 1987 and the Akwesasne Election Law enacted in 1988. The Canadian government has powers over our land and resources, our people, our governance. Again, through the Indian Act. Canada's powers are paternalistic and outdated. Akwesasne seeks to keep the beneficial parts of the Indian Act, tax exemption, protection of property and persons from seizure, while replacing other parts with Akwesasne's jurisdiction and authority under Eska. And I can't emphasize that the Indian Act became the law in 1876. It controlled commerce, women's rights, education, control of lands, membership, elections. The Indian Act governs over 800 First Nations in Canada today. Only exceptions are the self-governing First Nations, which has demonstrated their uniqueness. Some sections of the Indian Act have been rescinded and amended throughout the years. With the government-to-government relationship, under adopted, we negotiators will navigate the transfer of jurisdiction and authority from the Indian Act to the Mohawks of Akwesasne. And again, I must emphasize, it's noted that there are parts of the Indian Act which have proven to be very beneficial to Akwesasne. Section 87, tax exemption, Section 89 and 29, protection of property and persons from seizure. Next slide, please. Did I miss one? Anyway, there was a graph that was supposed to be on here, which shows that right now, under the Indian Act, 71% of the control of everything that we do in the government within Akwesasne is controlled by Canada.
It's the slide after this one, Shannon. There it is.
This one, okay. This percentage shows that Canada has control. With the agreement, the slide on your right will show that 83% will be controlled by Akwesasne. What is the 29%? Well, the biggest portion of the graph shows how much the Indian Act applies. The bigger portion on the right side, how much control MCA will have if it passes through Parliament. Over the past 34 years, MCA has taken on governance and administrative control from the Government of Canada. Membership code, election law, which I've mentioned, education, post-secondary, early childhood education, non-insured health benefits, social development and health, ethical conduct law, social Mohawk justice and courts, policing, environmental, natural resource and administration. Even though we have control over a lot of the governance and administrative capabilities, they're still limited because only when you pass your laws do you have fully control. And the Eska agreement, once it passes through ratification with our people and also through Parliament, it becomes law. For the past few years, we have been practicing self-government through the delivery of program and service of Akwesasne for many years, but it's still not fully recognized until the passage of the agreement itself. Then go back to why we are negotiating.
One slide back. There we go.
Okay, thank you. Provisions of the Indian Act that are not working need to be replaced with Akwesasne jurisdiction. Beneficial parts of the Indian Act would continue to apply, as I stated. Greater recognition of Akwesasne jurisdiction over our lands, resource, and governance is needed. The relationship with Canada must be on a government-to-government basis. Aboriginal rights, UNDRIP rights, land claims need continued recognition and protection as Akwesasne moves away from the Indian Act. Eska is a formal recognition by Canada of Akwesasne's exercise of an authority over jurisdiction, which is only partly recognized. This is not a treaty. We're not in treaty negotiations. This is not a land claim. If you attempt to negotiate treaties or land claims, you're going to give up something. We're not giving up anything. More importantly, what we're trying to do is protect what we already have and put it into a law. Our self-government negotiations are moving forward without giving up a thing. But more importantly, we're protecting our land, our rights, and much, much more. Next slide. Continued protections. Is this the one? I missed one. Can you go to the next one? Continued protections for Akwesasne. Akwesasne lands are reserved lands under Section 9124 of the Constitution Act 1867. Tax exemption, Section 87. Protection of Akwesasne lands and personal property from seizure, Sections 29 and 89. Fiduciary relationship with Canada, access to federal program and services, no restriction on pursuit of land claim settlements or resolutions. Canada remains liable for past errors, mismanagement of Akwesasne lands or other matters prior to the effective date of Eska. Aboriginal and treaty rights of Akwesasne recognized under Section 35, as I mentioned, Application of UNDRIP to the Mohawks of Akwesasne. This is a new twist with UNDRIP. No restriction or limitation on the rights or activities of the Mohawk Nation Council or the Haudenosaunee. We have the ability to review and update Eska if there are beneficial advances in future self-government agreements. This is really important because a large part of the protections that we have in the agreement that has been approved by Canada so far is that they're not found in any other self-government agreement. We're breaking great ground here. Recognition of Akwesasne jurisdiction, wherever that slide is. Maybe it's the first one, let's see.
It's up there now.
There was another one. Go back.
There's no other one. That's the
One
last one.
before that, I think.
It's the chart. This is the only slide you haven't covered.
I'm missing a slide. Go down again.
It's not there.
Anyway, I'll go through. Recognition of Akwesasne jurisdiction in Eska. Again, we're recognized as the government. Access to information and privacy. Membership, there it is, yeah. Recognition of Akwesasne justice system. Akwesasne enforcement of Akwesasne laws, officials, recognition of Akwesasne court, expanded powers for Akwesasne court, lands and land management, wills and estates, landlord and tenant. These are all chapters that we have within the agreement right now. Public order, public safety, public health emergencies, local traffic, transportation, roads, piers, wharfs, docks, harbors, alcoholic beverages, prohibition or permission for possession, regulation of businesses, public works, education, early years, kindergarten to grade 12, special needs, culture and language, post-secondary, environmental protection and environmental assessment, natural resource management. It needs to, I have to stress that how we're doing or what we're doing with the agreement itself or what has been approved. I can cite as an example. We have a chapter on education. If you look at the Indian Act, it says Canada, through the minister and his officials, has the right to provide facilities and an education for 6 to 16. In our agreement, we have 3-year-olds in Head Start, K4, K5. So that's 3, 4, and 5 years. It's in our agreement. Of course, we have primary schools, we have secondary schools through tuition agreements, but we also have post-secondary and adult education, which has been agreed to. We have curriculum development of our language, of our history. All of this is already in our agreement in that chapter, which has been agreed by Canada so far. If we look at environment, Henry Lickers did a lot of work on trying to ensure that in the environment chapter that we have the Thanksgiving, all the elements of the Thanksgiving address is in there. And that's what we have for environment. So, and we continue to work on the various other laws, if you want, that will protect, again, what we have, and then more so as we go into the future. Nation building identifies, well, maybe I should come to this one. Are there, well, is there any questions so far? I don't see any. Abram, do you want me to answer the question that I received earlier?
Yeah, speak to that. And there's a couple in the chat, which I can read off for you once you've spoken.
Please. Okay, go ahead with this one first. Go with the chat.
Okay, it says, is there an Akwesasne land code that has been started to be developed?
Oh yeah, the land code's been around for quite a long time, and we're pretty well getting close to it, to finishing the land code. But over the last, because of the pandemic, we haven't had a land code task force, which also includes not only our portfolio chiefs, ourselves, the executive director, but also it includes people from OVS lands and also community members, elders that also form that task force. But we haven't been able to meet for the last 2 years, but we're getting very close to it.
Is there a fiscal relations agreement that's in draft?
Not yet. We're just forming our internal fiscal relations committee, and MCR was passed 2 months ago on rescinding the old, I guess, MCR that set it up with a new one because of FAL. Once you had the financial administration law put in place, that changes while we're going to approach a fiscal relations agreement, because we need those members. We need quite a few of people with financial backgrounds to step up to be part of our working team to look at the physical chapter, which will be in the agreement, but also a new agreement, which has to be negotiated. And that negotiation is going to be tough because what it is that it's going to look at how funding will come to Akwesasne. It won't go to the department, or Department of Indigenous Services. It comes right off the top. Once the minister has his budget speech from the budget finance minister, does speech from the throne, and he announces a budget for the year, that money is divvied up to all the departments, all the federal departments, except for those that have special agreements or self-government agreements. That money is entrenched. It comes right off the top. It doesn't go to Indigenous Services. It doesn't go to CERNA. It comes right off the top. It doesn't go to a regional office using their outdated funding formulas. It comes directly to, and it's guaranteed. It's law. It's legislated. It's law.
There was a couple items that were listed about areas of jurisdiction. Why is labor law not in there, or what's the thinking on that?
Some of the laws are so, how would you say it? They're comprehensive. They're whole over everyone, such as labor. There are other areas that to have a law like that, establishing, they can have regulation of businesses, but a labor law, even with human resource development too, like staffing, it's really, you try to come to a situation where if this one works, why invent a new one? Or how is it going to apply? But labor is a good one, but I think that right now we really haven't touched on it, and I'd really like to bring it and have that discussion of why and what other laws are we looking at that really will tend to go under. The labor law, I don't think is anywhere stated in the Indian Act, because our focus has to be on the Indian Act and what they provide. And if we're looking at new ground, why not? Let's discuss it. Let's look at it.
Okay, thank you. What's in your slide about why we're negotiating, talks about Aboriginal rights and UNDRIP rights and land claims. Can you elaborate on UNDRIP and why that's important?
UNDRIP has just been passed as a law in Canada through their UNDRIP Act that was passed. There are so many provisions under UNDRIP that when we look at it, we're saying, wait a minute, okay, how do we fit this in? How do we ensure within our chapter on UNDRIP that we have the ability to use those as a government internally, but also in how we deal on a government basis with Canada? And that is a very, I would think, something that is challenging, but it's also a bright light on how they're going to, how we can probably provide solutions to Canada or to anybody on how we're going to treat the UNDRIP within our agreement, because they're still wondering how they're going to do it. They passed the act, but how are they going to implement it? And this is one way, through our self-government agreement. We can show them how we can implement it.
Okay, thank you. There was a question also about our collaboration, or your collaboration, your program's collaboration with Justice and the law development. Can you speak a bit to that?
Yeah.
You guys are working together.
Yeah, well, first, we do, because for nation building has identified various regulation and to become laws, or also for laws to create for new laws to be referenced in the Eska. I mean, this request is discussed with the negotiating team to which Justice participates, and all became aware of these regulations or laws. A good example is the governance code requirement, where certain regulations are required to become laws. Whatever templates are used for what process still remains with Justice. Nation building hopes that when we do go to Justice with a request of either changing a regulation into a law or a law, that we get on their priority list. Secondly, in negotiation of with Canada on how we're going to fund certain projects, we have a stream called the capacity development. And we have a capacity development grant established. And funding has gone to Justice for the last 3 years for the development of 3 laws annually and for the operating costs of the Legislation Commission. And it's also funding the Justice Review that is being carried out by Envision. So we have that connection, but it's really, if we make the request to Justice that these regulations have to become law, then they put it on their priority list. They have their processes, they have their template. But I must also note that Misha Menzer has probably developed over the past 45 years a lot of the regulations and a lot of the laws. So, and he's part of our team as well, and as well as Justice, OVS, Aero, and our portfolios.
Okay, thank you. Is there a quick update on the additions to reserve policy and how this relates to the self-government?
That is still in the hands of Aero. And the only part of Eska that has additions to reserve, where we do have a land exchange, we want to make sure that if there is a land exchange, whatever land is given to us, it becomes almost within a year, as we provided a policy to Canada, that within a year becomes part of 15 or 59. We cannot wait all these years, but that's in Aero's on their table, and hopefully we'll have continually having discussions on how, again, we can provide solutions to Canada and how to treat the new additions to reserve policy, whatever that is.
All right, thank you. When are we going to be able to see some of these documents? There's 2 of the documents that you've referenced. When will the community see them?
Well, the Eska agreement, the land code can probably go once we feel that we're going to have a land law and the work of the land code team is complete, that could go. However, until the Eska agreement is initiated by both parties, Canada and Akwesasne, with also the fiscal relationship agreement, then it will go out to the community. And we're getting close, I would say that, because we still have large issues that we have to do politically to talk to Canada about, not just Fred, not just CERTA, not just this, but all the other departments that have to be engaged in this process, because it has to go to Parliament, so they have to be on side.
Okay, thank you. Has there been any consideration for a housing law?
We have talked about it, I think about 3 years ago, when we were getting our land code task force work completed. Of course, there was talk at that time. I had PJ Hearn working for us at the time. We saw the need for having a housing law. Again, we can make the request, but it'll still have to go through Justice's processes to develop it.
Thank you very much, Peter, for the update and sharing the latest where we are with the UNDRIP self-government negotiations. I do want to give a shout out to your portfolio as well, who are very active in this file in moving it forward, and the whole team that you have on the negotiating team. Unfortunately, I'm not always able to make it to the pre-meetings and some of the negotiating meetings, but I know that the team that has been assembled to negotiate on behalf of our community is stellar, and I have all confidence in them, and we continue to receive their updates and your updates from the community, and it's greatly appreciated. So I want to thank you very much, Peter, for joining us this evening and sharing the update with us.
Okay, well, thank you all. And I just hope that, soon we can have our community members, elders, youth participating in our working tables. And even at this time, I'd like to give a special shout out to Brant Davis and Shelby Mitchell Adams for their documentary, Roots of Lacrosse, that just received an Emmy. Good job, okay? You guys all have a great evening and be careful out there.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much, Peter Garro, for that. And Peter Garro reminds me about the accomplishments that we have from a number of community members throughout the years via, arts, crafts, production, as he has mentioned in the book of recognition. The Yunkwagwenyo committee, I believe, is going to be working on ensuring we continue to move that forward. So stay tuned for information on that. The book of recognitions, the ceremonies and recognitions we used to do at the general meeting, we have done some virtually, and we will be continuing to move that forward. So. The next item that we wanted to just provide a briefing to you on is the protest, the convoy protest that occurred on the morning of February 12th, which is a Saturday morning, about 2 weeks ago now. We just wanted to give a quick update in relation to that, and that we will be meeting tomorrow internally with our council, our police services, and the Emergency Operations Center to debrief more formally and to go through the happenings of that event that happened on 2 weeks ago on Saturday. But just in summation, at approximately 7:30 in the morning on Saturday, about around 30 tractors arrived at the edge of the CBSA customs area, where you come around, and started parking there. As you know, there has been, or maybe don't know, there has been a convoy and a protest happening predominantly in Ottawa and some other isolated spots across the country in support of trying to get the vaccine directives and mandates and what have you removed. So at that time, there has been some various protests at border crossing locations. The one in Windsor, the Ambassador Bridge, was shut down for about a week and a few days. So subsequently, on the 12th of February, a group of people gathered there with their tractors to bring awareness. And from the information that we received, they were told very quickly that blocking the road would not be advisable. And that I will say that we didn't have any prior notice to this. I do know that there was some social media sites that may have called for supporters to arrive there, but it didn't make it across any of our desks at that time. I believe the police services may have had some indications, but didn't think that they were creditable. Now, I know that a number of the community got concerned about the closure of traffic going through there. The Cornwall Police quickly opened up a command center with the OPP, the RCMP, including the Akwesasne Mohawk Police Service, who were providing regular updates to myself, and I was doing the best that I can to keep council updated. There was no indication of how long this protest would take. There was a number of calls that I had received and members of our council received about the closure and concerns. How will we as a community get to the city of Cornwall if needed, whether it be for services or accessing essentials at the grocery store, what have you. Now, we do know that at no point at no point was the road blocked, but it was very intimidating, because you had these large farm tractors on both sides of the small bridge over what they call the canal, and then some tractors in the center medium, and vehicles had to, slowly go through there. Now, this started about before 8 o'clock in the morning, and around 4:30, the Cornwall Police and the OPP liaison had continued communications with the identified organizers on the ground, and who had indicated that at around 5:30 they would be vacating the area and not returning. Now, one of the reasons we are going to be having a debrief tomorrow is to make sure that in case of a reoccurrence of this, that we are continuing to ensure that the community is updated in a timely fashion as to what the current status is and what to expect when traveling over the border. Now, we know that, in other situations, sometimes our people are involved in protests or demonstrations to bring light to certain issues, and may sometimes block the roads that are resulting in the road being closed for a period of time. Now, clearly, as we know, this border crossing, we are the predominant users, and when it is closed, the impact is greatly to our community and creates a lot of uncertainty and anxiousness. Now, with having people that were not from our community blocking the road, we received lots of anxious people for other reasons, and that was predominantly about, what was going on, not having information. And frankly, we had some people who were pretty upset and irate, and we want to make sure that, we're communicating with the community on what information we have, and that people are being respectful from both ends, whether it be from our community or not, and that the roads are not being obstructed, and that our people are able to get through safely, whether it be coming into the community or leaving the community. So we have our police services had regular contact. I had regular contact with our police services. Our police services were contacted regularly with the OPP, the Cornwall Police. But I can assure you that we will be having a full debrief to take a better look at the mechanics and make sure that we are communicating at all points possible with the community in case this should happen again. As I mentioned, it's been 2 weeks, it has not, but we hope that it doesn't happen again. But of course, it's something that we need to ensure we're planning for. So I just wanted to share that information with you. I know that social media is always a tool to share information. It's not always a tool to share accurate information, but it's just important that we make sure that we continue, as the Mohawk Council and the elected leadership are keeping you updated, as well as our community residents in and around our community, including the Sandwich Mohawk Tribe and the Mohawk Nation and all our members on both sides of the border. So we will provide additional follow-up on that as we continue to move forward with ensuring we have all our T's and I's crossed to ensure we're communicating with you and doing what we need to do on behalf of the community. I can assure you that there was lots happening on the ground and we were responding and communicating regularly, but as in good practice, it's always good to have a review to make sure we've done the best that we can. So that's the update on that. I'll take a few moments to pause to see if there's any questions in relation to that. Okay, thank you very much. So I'm just going to take a moment now. Oh, I see a hand up. I think that's in relation to this. So I'll go to you, Taylor Day.
I have a question just based on, like, I guess the response, because I was in Kingston that day when that was happening for school, and I knew what was going on early because I'm savvy with, if something's going on, I know to go to CKON's Facebook, or someone's on the ground already usually, right? But my issue is a lot of that incident was seen as a island incident, and also just from, I guess, a general perspective was not taken seriously. And also, this is just my perspective of the day because I don't have all the chiefs on social media, but I did not see anything except for a couple like updates on the MCA Facebook or the CKON or the Cornwall Police Facebooks. So I guess I don't know, how can we have better communication? Because this is a very real threat. Anyone who was following anything that happened from day one in Ottawa, from the moment they left their houses to join this stupid convoy, the underlying messaging was always to do with white nationalism, white supremacy, and you can say that it was about masks and vaccines, whatever. But this is a real threat, and these people come out of the woodwork, just like they can do. They hide when you don't see them saying anything about residential schools, and when the babies were found, no, but they're quick to, run and cry about their freedoms. So I'm just angry at them at how close they were to our community. It feels like it wasn't taken seriously, not just on, you know, I'm not trying to scream at council, but just on the community as a whole. And sorry, can focus for a sec. What can we better do for safety measures? Because that day specifically, I was worried about my nieces and my nephew and all of my little cousins going through the border just to go on their regular days, you know, go grocery shopping, go to sports, whatever they need to do. But they had to go through these huge, stupid, whatever they're called, tractors with big, you know, they're waving these, I don't even know, there were white supremacist flags. Like, I can't understand how it just was not taken as seriously as it should be. And it was a huge failure of public safety that there was just no communication. We need some sort of, I don't know, emergency text alert, you know, hey, this is going on at the border. This is what we're doing to, you know, take care of it. This is who we're working with. It's just, it was very scary to, and I wasn't even here. I was just hearing about what was going on, you know, and then you get the concerns of, well, if, you know, we're not getting communication of anything happening, you know, on the ground, there's the concern of community members taking it in their hands, you know, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, in my opinion, in this situation. So I don't know what the question is. I'm just lost on how they were allowed to just waltz right in and just stand around and intimidate and instill fear in our community members for however many hours. But even just 1 hour is more than they should have ever had. That's all.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And thank you for that. Everything that you have said is exactly what we're going to be, you know, meeting with our officials to make sure that our response is better. This is, you know, I mean, it caught us off guard, but we want to take a better look at all the mechanics. And then absolutely right, everything that you've said is spot on. I mean, I drove through there a couple of times, and it was very intimidating to have these monstrous tractors on each side of the road and driving through there. And we had no idea how long this was going to take. I will say, though, that community members may have noticed that now there's Cornwall Police or OPP who have been stationed at the edge of Brookdale Avenue and Water Street. There's been at least one cruiser, up to 3 cruisers there. They still continue to be there so that if there is, they're able to respond and head them off so they're not gathering and congregating in that area. But we will be having more conversations with the police services. They know how vital this is, and they also know from our police, from me speaking to their sergeants there, that it potentially could have been a volatile situation very quickly. Because believe me, I got a few calls from some irate people letting me know that if I needed help or if something wasn't done, something was going to be done. So we were very conscious of this. So, yeah. Julie, did you have something you want to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to say it was very obvious that there's a double standard there when it comes to when we have a protest or when we have anything actually on Cornwall Island, you know, and that was an issue that I raised when council did meet that day, you know, like if that was our community, they would have shut down that bridge right away. It would have been shut, it would have been, you know, and they would have waited for people to leave in order for them to open it back up. So that double standard was also a very sore spot with us because, and I'm not saying I wanted them to shut down the bridge, but why the double standard? Why every time we're even on the side of the road, they have to shut it down? So Taylor, I share with you, you know, the fears of that day and you know, and we were on it. I know it didn't seem like it, but you know, from afar, we were all in. Grand Chief kept us well informed, and we also had, you know, and some may not believe it, but we really didn't have any kind of forewarning of it. If SIBC knew about it, they didn't share that information with us. Yeah.
Yep, you know, so definitely a lessons learned going to be coming from that, and we will plan for, we'll plan to do better next time from some of the areas that we failed in. Okay, thank you very much for that. I do have some questions that were received ahead of time from the community for tonight's meeting, so I'm going to take a moment to go through those. There was a question in relation to a specific road at 14 Shoreline Drive and the impacts of MCA vehicles turning around in that area and damaging the road. So we have relayed this information to our roads department, which is under the Department of Infrastructure, Housing and Environment. They do have a new roads manager coming on board and will be announced very soon. And this is a follow-up that manager will be assigned to be able to follow up with that area, ensure that if there is damage that we reported back, and if there is alternate ways that vehicles can turn around there. I would assume it's probably a school bus or a snowplow that's causing some concern there. So that has been noted and will be actioned on. There was a question in relation to the special needs project that some of the former members of council had been working on. So in 2009, several chiefs met with families of special needs, with special need family community members to listen to their challenges and to start developing a strategy. A chiefs committee on special needs was formed on March 1st, 2021 via an MCR, which included Chief Connie Lazor, Chief Carolyn Francis, Chief Julie Phillips Jacobs. ICA Associates, a consultant, was hired in 2001 to assist with the creation of a 5-year strategic plan on special needs. A steering committee was identified to help guide the process, which included Chief Connie Lazor, Chief Carolyn Francis, Chief Julie Phillips Jacobs, and the 2 consultants who were Mary LaFrance and Bill Staples, held virtual meetings with various groups, including community members, MCA administration, directors, staff, for the months of June and July. They also conducted a round of surveys for community members to solicit their input into the development of this strategic plan. So the document does contain lots of that feedback that was provided to them, and council has accepted that strategic plan by resolution on December 13, 2021. So we have accepted the strategic plan on special needs. We do want to pay a special appreciation to that steering committee for their support on this project, and the former members of council who assisted, Chief Connie Lazor, Chief Carolyn Francis, and current members who are championing that is Chief Julie Phillips Jacobs, Vanessa Adams, and Cindy Francis Mitchell. So they are part of the DCSS portfolio and will continue to support and monitor the implementation of this plan. So if there are additional questions, I encourage you to reach out to one of those members of council, but we will continue to move forward with the implementation of that plan on behalf of the community to meet those needs. There was a question in relation to the Section 95. The Section 95 is the rental units that the MCA has. It says, why are rent-to-own homeowners seeing increases in rent when Section 95 is a nonprofit and not a typical rental unit? So under Section 95 program with the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, the MCA is not able to make a profit. Some of our Section 95s break even financially. Some have a small surplus, and some of them operate at a loss. And generally, the surpluses are put into capital reserves, which is allowable under our agreements. All increases are recommendations by the housing program, which is based on current operational costs and inflation to keep the places and the units up. The recent increase was 2% and was accepted by council via resolution. Previous to that, it was several years since an increase had occurred on any of the rental units through the Mohawk Council. The other question is about the 2 wooden bridges in Snai, wanting to know if they are on the radar for the roads program. there seems to be a concern that they are quickly deteriorating. So we did last month have a presentation on the roads and the current priorities. We have been informed that a recent inspection was done in December of 2021 on these specific bridges that are raised. And we are currently in the process of getting those reviewed to ensure if there are any concerns with those bridges that they are addressed. So this will also be actioned on by our oncoming manager for the roads department, but an assessment was done on those bridges, and we are ensuring that we're meeting the recommendations, if any, in those reports. There was a question about the collaboration between the Department of Justice and nation building, and you will know from tonight's presentation, I did ask Peter Carl that question, and he did talk about how nation building is working with justice and how that relationship looks to support law development for our community. There's a question. I'm wondering why community don't get a copy of the previous general meeting minutes for review, the same as council does. It's a community meeting. Shouldn't the community also vote on passing the meeting minutes? So currently general meetings, including our special meetings of council, are operated on the Mohawk Council Procedural Regulations of 2013. The process used for recording the general meetings are done in accordance with those procedural regulations. Now, it doesn't prescribe that the meeting minutes go to the community. It also prescribes that the acceptance of resolutions and motions is only voted on by council, but the member's point is taken, and we will examine if that is an option that is available to have those made available ahead of time. So those are the questions that we received ahead of this evening's community meeting. There was a couple more that were received, but were received too late to respond. What we would do is we will put them into next month's general meeting. Connie Lazor, I see you have your hand up, so I'll go to you.
Thank you, Grand Chief. I do just have a couple of I don't know, comments or questions, however council chooses to hear them. Previously, we had worked on the construction of a new fire station in Akwesasne. The facility is over 40 years old and it is deteriorating badly. Some of council will recall the work started in the last term, where there was council agreed to the design phase, and it was at 99% done, and was getting close to being completed, and lobbying efforts were necessary. They advised me the other day they were told it's another 3 to 5 years. Well, 3 to 5 has already been gone by 2. What's the status on it? That building cannot last much longer. Indigenous Services was here touring it. They're the ones that said it needs a new facility, not a renovation. I respectfully am asking this council to consider bridge funding that facility to get it done sooner than later. Putting new equipment in there only to have the building collapse on it doesn't make much sense. So I'm hoping that you can all come together and figure out how to make it happen. Those men and women volunteer to serve this community. They shouldn't have to wait for a facility that helps them do that and house their equipment. So I respectfully ask that you look into how we can move this along a little bit further, sooner than later. My second comment or question is, I think I seen in one of Grand Chief's reports, leadership meetings coming up with nation and the tribe. I wonder, chiefs, if you would consider creating a project team amongst all of you to seriously look at the Akwesasne crisis that sits in front of us with the deaths of all of our young folks due to substances in our community. I thank those that worked on a detox center for the 5 beds and the thing and what came with that. That's a great amount of work, and I thank you for that. but I think we need to go bigger. I think between the three leaderships and all of your minds together, you guys can come up with a way that we can have a facility in Akwesasne, whether it's on the US or the Canadian side, and that we start pulling together all these services that are working in silos and let them run the facility and help our people. Losing people so young is heartbreaking. That's your future. So I just wonder if between the three leaderships, we can pull together to create something that works for our community, something that's last, something that will sustain not only them, but our future. It's sad, it's real sad, it's heartbreaking to watch people I know suffer so badly at the loss of a sibling. So I ask that you really, really consider stepping up, pulling the tribe and the nation together and work for the betterment of our community. Thank you, Grand Chief. Thank you, Council.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. We will take back the the request on the Sni Fire Department. I know that you're well aware of this project, and we'll see what the status of it is. And it's been acknowledged that the facility is in need of replacement sooner than later. On the substance, absolutely, we do have some meetings coming up with the tribe and the Mohawk Nation in relation to a number of issues that we commonly share outside of COVID, that is, and the substance and addiction issues in our community is on the agenda to have a conversation with them. We've recently, well, we're in the process now of working with our partners at the Cornwall Community Hospital, our Department of Health, and our Department of Community Social Services to bring some detox services to the community. This hasn't been widely announced yet, but it is in the process right now, and hopefully, you know, we'll have that mobilized and operating in the very near future. But while detox is one component, there is many components to receiving care and for our community members, you know, post and pre-care, and the detox is only the medical side of it. And this is something that you know, we're going to make sure that we're supporting 100% to bring the programs together and bring down the silos. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Grand Chief. Rehabilitation is the biggest component.
Yeah.
And sometimes understanding your own identity and who you are and where you come from will truly help.
No,
Thank
absolutely. And there is a component just previous in late 2021, the council announced some funding set aside for community-based healing. We allocated almost $200,000 to community not businesses, but organizations that provides multi-services to the community, from healing to support services. And this is not, you know, a one-off approach, but we knew that it was important that people have other alternatives outside of the Mohawk Council, and that's why we identified those resources for community-based healing, because COVID has only made things much more worse for all of us in many fashions, including those that may have fallen through the cracks. And this is something that we're trying quickly to move on. So, you know, for that. Vincent Cook, I'll go to you for a question.
Yes, I was just, while you were presenting and doing some other things, I was reviewing your monthly report. One of the items in there is that there was a presentation from Quebec Hydro on some social responsibilities monies that they have for not-for-profit organizations, and that you and maybe some other council members sat in a presentation from Hydro Quebec.
That's correct. Yes.
Like it's nice for MCA to know that those funds are available. Is there a way that, and we have many other not-for-profit organizations within the community that could probably help Quebec Hydro spend that money.
Mm-hmm.
And is there a way to get some of that information in regards to the application process out to the larger community?
Yes, no, absolutely. There's every member of council has received that, but I will, I'll ensure that what we have, we are sharing with the community, because some of these funds may not be beneficial to the Mohawk Council, but absolutely some of the small organizations and groups we have in the community, it may be. So we will share that.
Definitely. And the other piece too is, and I'm going to have to ask for your assistance in helping me remember. When Peter Garrow was giving his presentation tonight, he mentioned a whole bunch of little sections of, I don't know if it's the Wadatkawi, whatever that agreement is that's being negotiated or hammered out right now. He was talking about a number of different sections in that are going to be hit home in there, like childcare, education. Is that, when he was talking about that, is that what is that what's being negotiated, is a whole bunch of different issues and projects in there that affect a whole bunch of different things out of that we need in the community?
Mm-hmm. So in a nutshell, some of the listings that he provided, we already do, whether it be with recognition from the outside or not, such as control of education. We've controlled our education for a very long time through the self-government agreement that will essentially codify with the federal government that authority that we have. Now, this is bit of the controversy on self-government is that we already exercise lots of jurisdiction over a number of areas. The self-government agreement only, recognizes it through a formal agreement. That's so the things that he was talking about is number of areas that we already do that. Membership is one of them. Education is another one. There's a number of program areas that we already do it with. So some of those services will be rolled into a final agreement that recognize our jurisdiction over it.
One of the things that he said is that land code idea. Do you know some of the issues that they're talking about in land code? Is it almost like a zoning, like this part of our territory you can do industry, this part is for housing, this part is for recreation? Is that some of the land code idea, or like I don't have any clue what that means.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just give some insight to us?
Yeah. So it's not zoning. So basically, if you pick up the Indian Act, it talks about a number of areas that the government of Canada has authority over in the management of lands, like wills, estates relate to land, the issuance of a certificate of possession. All of those sections in the Indian Act talk about what the government can do. The land code essentially says not the same thing, but has the same concept, but it says the Mohawks of Akwesasne can do this. So when a survey is done of a piece of parcel and one goes to you, one goes to me, it only goes to the Mohawk Council for approval. It doesn't go to the government of Canada for approval anymore. So that's the essence of the land code. It takes away the control of Indian affairs over lands. Now, the zoning could be a component, but it's not built into it right now. This would require lots of conversation with the community if they want zoning. It's really about local control over decisions.
Okay, having heard that, one of the points of discussion sometime I've heard it in the last year or so in general meetings, but I've heard it more in SNI district meetings, and don't tell anybody what I'm telling you about what we discussed in the SNI district meeting, because those are secrets. But only kidding. But one of the things we were talking about is that, and we're disappointed in, several people are disappointed in, is that the leasing of land, especially on the islands, we were told that that there seems to be no requirement in land, people who lease Akwesasne lands to be vetted through the residency I forget what it's called, residency bylaw, or, and that there's, so anybody else who comes to live in Snai, Gawinoge, Ganadago, they don't have membership, they would have to go through a residency process, correct?
Yes.
And that people who come from Toronto, Mississippi, wherever they come from, and they lease lands either from private owners or from MCA, the public entity, that those people don't necessarily have to go through the same rigors that the residency, I'm not sure, that the residency law, that they have to go through in there. And so, like, we're basically ignoring those people and their backgrounds and what they bring or take from the Akwesasne community. One of the things that was discussed too is that while we were going through this COVID, you know, there was a circumference, or there's a, I forget what you called it, but
Travel
there
radius.
was, yeah, a travel radius. And basically the people who were coming in during the summers on the islands and stuff like that, nobody was really keeping an eye on them or whatever. And this land code, is there an opportunity that and I guess we were told by chiefs is that there's that we you guys council doesn't have any like that's been taken out of your hands by way of Indian Affairs or Indian Act. This land code, is that an opportunity to apply our other laws to non-members who come to benefit from our land and you know, other services that we may be providing to them at no charge? And that's my question, because it's come up at several meetings.
Yeah, so that's a bit of a two-parter. What I can do is we'll undertake to get a bit more of the answer on why they don't have to apply for residency permissions when they have leases. I know there's a bit more of a technical legal answer on that. I don't have that offhand. It's not the first time it's brought up. I just can't remember. But when the land code is developed, absolutely, all of those things that the community desires to be a requirement to live or lease some lands from us will absolutely have to be adhered to. Because don't forget, those leaseholders, the document, the physical document says is a lease between the government of Canada and that leasee on behalf of the Mohawks of Akwesasne. When the land code is done and implemented, it will then be directly with the leaseholder and the Mohawk Council on behalf of the community of Akwesasne.
Well, I bring it up because I want to make sure that anything like the land code or any new agreements, you know, maybe it's not a treaty, but any new agreements gives the Mohawk Council of Akwesasne and the people of Akwesasne I don't know. Well, I'll just give them the power that Canada currently holds, you know?
Yep, and that's the design of the land code land code through the nation building process, so that we're in the
Yeah.
driver's seat on these and we're not in the passenger seat. And a lot of these
Right.
things there are some things in our purview of control, but there's some that's not. So with the land code design would be is that we're in control of it all.
Do you know if that has already been discussed at that table, and that you don't have a certain understanding of what's going to be included, and the government of Canada thinks, oh, that we didn't even talk about that, so of course that's not going to be included. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the whole premise of, that's why Peter kept referring to the Indian Act, because the Indian Act has a long section on lands. And when he said that it's done, it will be all, the Indian Act will be gone and it'll be replaced with our agreement. That's the design of self-government negotiation.
Well, he also said that certain other things, like the Indian Act isn't going to go away, that we are still going to be living under certain conditions of the Indian Act. And that seems to be a big thing for community folks, that that what's good for one person is not even being looked at for another,
Yeah. No,
Thank you.
absolutely. Thank you for that. Okay. Is there anything else? Leonard Lazar, we'll go to you.
Hi guys. So I'm just following up from the last general meeting where I had requested to find out the process to request a meeting with the Mohawk Council, political officials, with the administration of Mohawk Council, and the residents or tenants of Section 95 rental units. There's some major issues with the lease because, as I stated before in the last meeting, was that it's just a Governor Riverview rental lease where they scratched the name off and wrote Section 95 rent to own. However, none of the provisions are in there about, the dollar amounts, again, how much the house is worth, how much the payments are going to be. There's nothing to issue. It does not talk about that we're going to own the land. All of those things happened. There was no work done all these years. However, the Mohawk Council did approve an MCR to raise the increases. However, many of us are still requesting that meeting. It's been a whole month, and I checked all of my digital communications, including my cell phone, my house phone, my emails, my iPad, my computer. I even hooked up my fax machine. I went to the mailbox to look for mail. I have not had any communications of any kind from the Mohawk Council, like you said would happen. So I ask, what say you?
Well, it has not been actioned on, and I apologize for that. And it will be before the next meeting. There's 12 other people here as my witness, that a few of them are on the portfolio, and they will reach out to have it scheduled.
So, okay, so second question here, and I don't really know if you're really going to answer this much, but I'm going to ask it. Now, from what happened I'm going through the proper process here, right? And I'm doing this to show everyone what happens with the MCA. So I raised the issue at a district meeting, which you were, you acknowledged that you were informed about. So then I waited and I brought the meeting up at the general meeting. Now, no action was taken. Now this is the second general meeting. So now my question is, in terms of service delivery from the Mohawk Council of Akwesasne, I am not impressed. This is the kind of service delivery that, not only jeopardizes our rights, but impacts our ability to govern and lead ourselves, which is probably going to block any of the work that Nation Building is doing. As it currently stands, as much as I love the guy, Peter, and I love the theory of what he's doing, in reality, I'd have to not support that. And in fact, I'd actually block it. I take an active stance to block any of that work until these issues are resolved. So I look forward to hearing from the Mohawk Council, because then at that point in time, I'm going to put it on Facebook and invite all of the Section 95 rental tenants to be a part of that. So going forward, I mean, I hope you guys really take this service delivery, serious, because going forward, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be tracking the service delivery of the Mohawk Council. And my message to you guys are that should you drop the ball like you just did, well, here's my message: grow or go. we for so much have had issues. The community has had issues with the Mohawk Council. However, you know, the mistake we have is that we let you guys hold each other accountable. We let you guys be transparent. However, it doesn't happen. That things just continue, nothing changes. So with that being said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to take action and say that, you know, the people, we have to start to, you know, come together and really look at the service delivery and performance wise of not only on the Mohawk Council elected system, but for the administration as well. And the message is grow or go. And if that can't happen and people have to go, I have no problem, you know, initiating the process to remove anyone who can't do the job. It's strictly on performance. It has nothing to do with personal issues. I actually like the majority of you guys, not all, but that being set aside, I'm talking about performance, Grand Chief. It's time. You guys have to step this up now. And this is just wonder, you can't even make a phone call back within a month. How are we going to trust you with nation building? Those are big responsibilities. So again, yeah, I look forward to this meeting.
I acknowledge your request, and on behalf of the Mohawk Council and the council, I apologize for it not happening sooner. I didn't think this was something I had to action on myself and make sure it was done, but clearly I've learned from this, and you will get a call for a meeting set up before the next general meeting. I apologize for that.
Awesome, thank you.
You know. All right. We're going to bring the meeting to close now. It is 10 to 8. I want to thank everybody for joining us this evening. The information that we shared through our presentations will be made available to you on our website. As always, this general meeting is recorded and will be shared through our YouTube page, and the link will be on our Facebook page, including in our regular emails that we send out to you. So I want to read a resolution for the record, which is to accept and approve the attached general meeting minutes dated January 27, 2022. Could I have a mover for the resolution? Moved by Vince, second by Joanne. Discussion on the resolution.
Question.
Question's been called on the resolution. All in favor? Any against? None against, it's carried. All right, so I want to thank everybody again for joining us this evening for our February 24th general meeting. Our next general meeting will be March 24th. We are in the plans of making that an in-person hybrid model where you can either join online or in person. Clearly, depending on how COVID goes between now and that March 24th general meeting, that may change, but the plan is right now to have an in-person meeting. So stay tuned to your means of receiving our updates, whether it be CKON, Facebook, or email, but that is the plans. So on behalf of myself and our council, thank you to all of you for this evening, for joining in. The questions that you've had to us, the input and the dialogue is always much appreciated. So with that, could I please have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Julie, second by Vanessa. Thank you very much, all of you. Have a great evening and be safe.